The NFL draft is anything but a sure thing. With every instance of the commissioner stepping up to the podium on draft night to announce the selection of a player, your guess is as good as mine as to whether that promising college prospect will end up out of the league within a few years or donning one of those dapper gold jackets in Canton 20 years down the line. At this point, the evaluation process has been boiled down to such a black and white science that every factor about a prospect is taken into consideration. Ranging from intelligence to strength to speed and a few odd questions tucked in between, no stone is left unturned and everything is weighed into the equation. But for as well as these so-called draft analysts and NFL executives think they can predict how well a player will turn out, it's become painfully obvious that the only certain thing about drafting is that it's uncertain. And as an NFL YouTube channel based almost entirely around the mistakes made on draft day by these so-called geniuses, you can take my word for it. Now, in today's video, I would like to take a break from the accustomed content found on this channel of who was drafted before a player and do a 180 to who was drafted after a player. And with that said, we shift our sights to the Windy City and the subject of today's video, Mitchell Trubisky. Now, as previously aforementioned, the draft is far from the clear-cut science that NFL front offices would like it to be. So I can't go after the Bears too hard here. But at this point, it's pretty safe to say that they made a huge mistake at the 2017 NFL Draft. And today I would like to go into further depth about what went wrong with Trubisky, and also look at some of the notable players who had their names called after him. But first, if this is your first time here, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into the video. To see how Mitchell became the bust he is today, let's take it all the way back to his roots. From Ohio, Trubisky played his high school ball in-state at Mentor High School. While there, he was quite the prolific passer, throwing for 9,126 yards and 92 touchdowns, while also rushing for 1,559 yards and 33 touchdowns. He also moonlighted as the team's punter. Ranked as the number 3 player in Ohio, teams were beating down the door to recruit him, with Mitchell receiving offers from big-time programs such as Alabama, Michigan State, Tennessee, and Ohio State, but he would ultimately decide to attend the University of North Carolina. Arriving at Chapel Hill in 2013, Trubisky was originally redshirted. In 2014, he played sparingly, throwing for 459 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. In 2015, he once again barely played, throwing for a measly 555 yards, but had an impressive ratio of 6 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. But once 2016 came around, Mitchell was finally given the reins to the offense. In his one and only season as a starter, Mitchell threw for 3,748 yards, 30 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions, which resulted in him being named third-team All-ACC and viewed as one of the top quarterback prospects at the 2017 NFL Draft. During his evaluation, scouts called him a high-end quarterback prospect who possesses NFL size, a big arm, and the ability to throw with accuracy from the pocket or on the move. But there were also a few red flags when it was noted that there are times he looks like Blaine Gabbert, and that he needs to get better at seeing blitzes and throwing hot. This was enough to convince the Bears to trade their first, third, and fourth round picks in 2017, and another third in 2018 to move up one spot and get their guy. During his rookie season in 2017, he rode the bench behind Mike Glennon until week 5, when the reins to the sputtering Bears offense were handed over to him. In his 12 starts, he compiled 2,193 yards for 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, while also adding 248 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Going into 2018, the Bears made some major changes when they brought in a new head coach and offensive guru Matt Nagy, and signed offensive skill players Taylor Gabriel, Allen Robinson, and Trey Burton to deals. And I would have to say, at the time, these moves certainly paid off. The Bears elevated their play alongside Trubisky, and the team went 12-4 behind Mitchell's 3,223 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, to go along with him rushing for 421 yards and 3 touchdowns. This elevated play caused some people, Pylon Sports, to have knee-jerk reactions, and I even called Mitchell a vanilla Cam Newton, and projected the Bears to go to the NFC Championship game. Well, in reality, that magical season came to an end on the double doink, as it also appears Mitchell's career has. So far in 2019, Trubisky has been garbage. Due to his inability to accurately throw the ball down the field, his issue of only passing to his right side, and his inability to make more than just his first read, he didn't throw a touchdown pass till week 3, has led the Bears offense to being ranked 28th in the league in points per game, and is the 31st worst QBR in the league. Now, although you can't pin all of this on him, and both the team and Nagy do need to shoulder some of the blame, it's become obvious that he's the catalyst for the Bears' sputtering offense. Currently, he's on his way to bust status, as opposed to some of the players selected after him. Now, in today's video, I'd like to take a look at some of the talents selected after Mitchell that the Bears probably would have preferred over him. Now, a quick disclaimer here, although there's a lot of players the Bears would have preferred over Trubisky, I'll only be covering players that I think they would have felt comfortable taking with the second overall pick. Coming in as the first player the Bears would have taken instead of Mitch, we have Christian McCaffrey, who was originally taken 8th overall by the Panthers. Now, although in the past 10 years, the only running back who's been selected in the top 2 is Saquon Barkley, I still think Christian is worthy of this pick, even though he looks more like an insurance salesman than an elite running back. Appearances can be deceiving though. Coming out of Stanford, McCaffrey was a prolific collegiate back. Having broken Barry Sanders' NCAA all-purpose yards record in 2015 with a monstrous 3,864-yard season, he had proven that he was not only an elite running back, but also an elite receiver and returner. In the evaluation process, Christian was noted as being a multi-dimensional runner who can carry the ball 20 times or catch it 10. But for all the hype, his critics noted his lack of size and NFL caliber power, leading to him being considered an inferior prospect to guys such as Leonard Fournette and falling to the Panthers at the 8th overall pick. In his short career as a pro, Christian has already amassed 2,656 rushing yards, which ranks 4th since 2017, and has 2,104 receiving yards, which is the most of any running back in the league since 2017. Currently, he's in the midst of his best season as a pro, with 1,123 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns, 586 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. He's already run away with the Offensive Player of the Year award, and has a legitimate shot at MVP. Imagine if the Bears had pulled the trigger on him. They could have had a lethal backfield of McCaffrey, Cohen, and Howard. Just another reason why the Bears are a cursed franchise. Now for the second player the Bears would have taken instead of Mitch, Patrick Mahomes, who was originally taken 10th overall by the Chiefs. Although a childish saying, first is the worst, second is the best, there's never been a better example of this than Mahomes and Trubisky. Coming out of Texas Tech, Patrick was compared to Jay Cutler, but one NFC executive did say, if it clicks for him and he's coachable, I think he could become a special quarterback. And after a year spent waiting behind Alex Smith, this is undoubtedly true. Now, not to dig too deep into the obvious, but it's within reach for him to become one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time. Since 2018, he has the most passing touchdowns and the second most passing yards out of all NFL quarterbacks, and he's done all of this despite the fact that he's missed a couple games. Now, not to upset Bears fans too much, but this could have been a reality. So, for the third player the Bears would have taken instead of Mitch, Deshaun Watson, who was originally taken 12th overall by the Texans. Now, unlike Mahomes, who the Bears never really considered drafting, Deshaun is a completely different story. Coming out of Clemson, the former national champion was considered a tremendous leader and winner, but scouts were worried about his inconsistent field vision and decision making. But for all his flaws as a player, then Bears head coach John Fox allegedly had wanted Deshaun Watson, but was overruled by general manager Ryan Pace, and the Bears franchise has since paid the price. So far for their careers, Mitchell averages 206 passing yards a game with 1.2 touchdowns and 0.7 interceptions, while Deshaun averages 258 passing yards, 1.9 touchdowns, and 0.7 interceptions. On the ground, Mitchell averages 20 rushing yards a game for 0.16 touchdowns and 5.5 yards an attempt. Watson, on the other hand, averages 33 rushing yards a game for 0.35 touchdowns and 5.8 yards an attempt. With the Mahomes pick, I can't fault the Bears too much since no one knew how good he would be. But with Watson, that must be gut-wrenching for Bears fans since your own head coach wanted him. Now coming in with the fourth player the Bears would have taken instead of Mitch, TJ Watt, who was originally taken 30th overall by the Steelers. TJ has certainly followed in his older brother JJ's footsteps. Coming out of Wisconsin, he demonstrated relentless effort and attacked blockers, which convinced the Steelers to use the 30th overall pick on him. So far as a pro, he has 31.5 sacks since 2017, which is the 4th most out of any defender in that time frame. And so far through 2019, he's 4th in the league in sacks. Now, while this pick would have significantly helped the already vaunted Bears defense on the field, think of the implications of this on the Khalil Mack trade. Now sure, Khalil is probably the better edge rusher here, but the drop-off between him and TJ is pretty small, and if the Bears had drafted him, they most likely wouldn't have traded for Mack, leading to the Bears keeping 2 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 6th-round pick, and about $141 million in cap space over the next 6 years. Now with all that extra capital, the Bears would have been in a much better position at the moment. So for the 5th and final player the Bears would have taken instead of Mitch, George Kittle, who was originally taken 146 overall by the 49ers. The only non-first-round pick on this list, Kittle wasn't highly touted coming out of Iowa, with his best season being 314 receiving yards. Most scouts didn't even have him as a top 10 tight end, and he was considered a 4th-round pick. Yet, George has overcome all this and quickly become one of the best tight ends in the modern era. So far as a pro, George's play speaks for itself. He already has the record for most receiving yards in a season by a tight end, has the 3rd most receiving yards of any tight end since 2017, and is currently on pace to have the most receiving yards by a tight end in his first 3 years in NFL history. He's a dynamic playmaker and is the rare tight end worthy of being selected as high as 2nd overall, and he would definitely bring more to the Bears' anemic offense than what Mitchell brings. Mitchell Trubisky is definitely a flawed player, and although I still think there's a chance he can resurrect his career, every week at NFL football further reinforces his status as a bust, and various players drafted after him as potential Hall of Famers. And for as big of a mistake the Bears made with his selection of the 2017 NFL Draft, at the end of the day they still managed to get Eddie Jackson and Tariq Cohen in that same class. But Bears fans will always ask themselves, what if, regarding the selection of Mitchell Trubisky.